The Berlin Wall, the barrier broken by the will of the people. Imagine living in a place where you are completely and utterly blocked down, isolated from the outside world. A place where you are denied life's simple pleasures like buying that really popular game from the store or getting the newest car on the market the moment you reach legal driving age. Now imagine that place was controlled by an overbearing communist nation that inflicted more restrictions, including the lack of political freedoms, not allowing the right to travel, denying freedom of speech, and having your everyday actions monitored. Lastly, imagine that there was a way to escape from this place to a new home and the complete opposite of where you were before. Even if this could cost you your life, would you do it? That was the same question the people of East Germany asked themselves during the time of the Berlin Wall. In the late 20th century, there was no better symbol of the division between communism and democracy than the Berlin Wall. So, how did we get here? And how was a country divided between two polar opposites?
Well, its origin came from during World War II, where Great Britain, the US, France, and the Soviet Union allied to defeat Adolf Hitler in Germany. They successfully defeated Hitler and conquered Germany, and during a conference in 1945, they decided to each occupy and govern a zone of Germany, including governing the capital of Berlin in zones as well. Even though it was fully in Soviet territory, it was still the capital city. They also decided that this would end as soon as a formal peace agreement was attained. Over time, anti-communism swept over nations as the Soviet Union struggled to spread their influence and never fulfilled the promises they made for the development of their zone of Germany. Instead, they were setting up communist dictatorships and taking East Germany's limited resources as war reparations. After multiple failed tries for the nations to agree on a peace settlement, the United States, Great Britain, and France decided to unite their occupied zones into West Germany and their zones in Berlin into West Berlin and started rebuilding their economy. The Soviet Union was not happy about this, and in 1948 they cut off all water and land traffic into the newly unified West Berlin, resulting in the Berlin Blockade as it is called today.
In response to the blockade, the Western Allies flew planes with all the supplies the West Berliners needed to West Berlin, now known as the Berlin Airlift. The Soviets realized their plan had failed and ended the blockade a year later in 1949. As the Berlin Airlift occurred, the East German economy worsened, and about 2.5 million East Germans moved from East Germany to West Germany, including the main working force, and scholars also left. To prevent this, the Soviet Union closed the border between East and West Germany, but it didn't stop 200,000 people from leaving the undeveloped and freedom-lacking country through Berlin since it was already inside East Germany. This would have, in fact, completely destroyed East German economy worse than before, and the government of East Germany decided to build a wall in the East German part surrounding West Berlin, in their words, to prevent West Berliners from entering, but it was instead to keep East Germans from leaving. On August 12, 1961, the East German government started the construction. When the wall was finished, the part separating East and West Berlin had a length of 26 miles, or 42 kilometers. It was made of gigantic concrete slabs that were around 12 to 15 feet, or 3.7 and 4.6 meters. West Berlin was also surrounded with a wall with a total length of somewhere around 110 miles, or 160 kilometers. Transportation from East Berlin to West Berlin was shut off, and people wishing to cross the border through the checkpoints were denied. Over time, the Berlin Wall started to become more and more fortified with more weapons. This action was planned to prevent anyone from crossing it without permission from the government. The wall consisted of cement, steel, barbed wire fences, and explosive traps. Along the walls were also watchtowers with soldiers, weapons, and a strip of land in front of the wall called the Death Strip, filled with even more weapons. Instead of the wall, the Soviet Union also put secret police in East Germany called the Stasi that closely monitor their citizens and their thoughts as well as manipulate them in favor of the government. No matter how dangerous the wall or the government was, adventurous and brave East Germans attempted to cross in ways like sneaking over it at night, digging under it, and for some creative ones, building a hot air balloon to fly over it. More than 5,000 East Germans managed to cross the wall. Nonetheless, 5,000 other East Germans were captured by the guards after their attempts, and sadly, over 190 were killed, either by the traps set there or shot by the border guards. On June 12, 1987, United States President Ronald Reagan delivered a speech in West Berlin to serve his turn in Berlin, after multiple other presidents spoke in West Germany before him. President Reagan's speech was given in front of the Berlin Wall and demanded the General Secretary of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, to bring down the wall with the famous quote,
"Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall."
After hearing the speech, it inspired and motivated many people on the other side of the wall to protest against their cruel and unfair government. In late September, anti-government demonstrations began in Leipzig, East Germany. These demonstrations demanded for the people's rights, and soon, on October 1st, Erich Honecker, East German leader, loosened the laws on travel to calm the people, but strict restrictions still existed, so the people of East Germany were still unhappy. In October of 1989, both internal and external pressures were put on the East German government, one of them including freedom marches, consisting of 70,000 East Germans chanting the phrase, "We are the people," as they fought for their freedom and demanded the communist government to resign. The East German government tried their hardest to stop the protests, but inevitably failed. And this was when many realized that the government's control over the people had diminished, as the majority of East Germany's government had resigned, and the efforts of the East German people striving for the freedom they deserved would have finally paid off. With that said, on November 9th, at the end of a conference, East German government press officer named Guenter Schabowski was asked about the new travel laws in East Germany, and Schabowski read out files from the conference, and it stated that East Germans could travel freely after getting a visa from the local police station. But when he was asked if that meant that East Germans could travel without restriction, he responded that he guessed so. This news was reported on multiple news channels, but many did not include that a visa was still required to pass because of Schabowski's extremely interpretable response. This fake news spread and sparked an enormous reaction from the East Germans, as thousands of them all crowded in front of the border checkpoints, thinking that they could get through without a visa. The police and border guards had not even gotten the news of the new travel laws yet, and were surprised when thousands of East Germans crowded in front of the wall checkpoints waiting to pass through. At first, the border guards sent them back to obtain visas, but more and more came, demanding to get through without a visa, and eventually, they were so outnumbered and pressured that on the night of November 9th, the remainder of the East German government had realized they lost their control completely, and East Germany's new leader, Egon Krenz, decreed the wall to be open. Thousands of East Germans packed through the checkpoints as they celebrated their newfound freedom. Through the night, people climbed on top of the wall, and soon people started breaking down the wall for private collections, while others celebrated with champagne and sang songs together. The separated people of East Germany are now reunited, and now East Germans could finally reclaim their previous lives, and soon the fall of this hated wall would also lead to something that both East and West Germans were wishing for, and that was reunification. After discussions between the Soviet Union, the United States, Great Britain, and France, and a few issues including NATO, the four allies agreed on reunification and eventually ended their occupation in Germany. After Hitler's rule and the pain caused by the Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union, it was time for the people of Germany to start over. And on October 3rd, 1990, Germany was reunited, and it gave way to a new beginning. After the wall was broken and Germany was reunified, a wave of hate for the Soviet Union and their totalitarian ways became stronger as it flowed across nations, and people realized to no longer fear crossing swords against the communist regime. This included Soviet satellite states and republics within the Soviet Union declaring independence. Less than a year after Germany's reunification, the once mighty Soviet Union was no more, and after internal and external issues with the Soviet Union itself had fallen. The Berlin Wall was a product of the Cold War and the cause of the separation of Berlin. The Berlin Wall served as a forceful and yet a little bit cowardly way for the Soviet Union and the East German government to keep the working population from leaving their poor lives to start a new one with opportunities in the capitalist counterpart to East Germany. Today, we still celebrate the fall of the Berlin Wall and teach the younger generations to keep on remembering this event, which is part of why I'm speaking of this event. But, most importantly, we teach them this and hope that they will never let anything as tragic as the Berlin Wall happen in the future, and that no one can take away the birthright of freedom.